Hello, I'm Anupama Chen. I'm an author, an awarded blogger, a community builder, and a mentor based out of Gurgaon. My latest book, Kings, Saviors, and Scoundrels Timeless Tales from Katha Sarit Sagara, is available for pre booking on my publisher Readomania's website. This book should be available on Amazon and various book outlets across India pretty soon. Kings, Saviors, and Scoundrels Timeless Tales from Katha Sarit Sagara is a melting pot of entertaining kathas rooted in the traditional style of Indian storytelling of Indian princesses, their splendid adventures, about the deceit by scoundrels, the kindness shown by saviors. This is a perfect feel good book for this festive season, especially for the young and young at heart alike. I hope you like this. I've done the illustration for this book as well. And I thank PILF and Manjari Prabhu for giving me this opportunity to talk about my book. This book is a curated collection of short stories from India's oldest classic, Somadeva's Karasarit Sagara. And I hope you all have a good festive season ahead. Stay safe and stay happy.
Welcome back to Studio One. In this conversation, we have our guests, Suman Ghosh and Somak Ghoshal, sharing their valuable insights with us on the filmmaker Soumitra Chatterjee and the book Soumitra Chatterjee, A Filmmaker Remembers by Suman Ghosh. Suman Ghosh is a professor of economics at Florida Atlantic University. He obtained his master's in economics from the Delhi School of Economics before joining Cornell in 1996, where he did his PhD in economics. He's a national award-winning filmmaker. Films directed by him include Podokep, Dwando, Noble Chore, Shamal Uncle Turns Off the Lights, Kadambari, Peace Heaven, Basu Poribar, Searching for Happiness, and Aadhar. He also directed the documentary on Amartya Sen, the Argumentative Indian. Somak Ghoshal has worked in media and publishing for 15 years. He's the author of 2 books for young readers. Currently based in Delhi, he works in EdTech. We request Somak Ghoshal to begin this interesting conversation.
Thank you everyone for joining this evening. It's my absolute honor and privilege to be in conversation with Suman Ghosh and his wonderful new book about Soumitra Chatterjee, an icon who most of us Bengalis have grown up with in the 80s, 90s, and the decades preceding that. Mr. Ghosh's book is a wonderful insight into the life of a very, very brilliant actor, a genius, a world-class actor with whom he had the fortune of working very closely on several occasions. So what we get an insight into is Soumitra Chatterjee, the actor beyond the Satyajit Ray movies, who we actually know most familiarly from Satyajit Ray's movies, but we see a very, very contemporary, more recent version of the actor's style, life, and values. So thank you, Mr. Ghosh, for writing this really wonderful, rich book. Before we begin talking about the book proper, I would just like you to reflect on the fact that, you wrote a book on the man and not made a documentary, which sort of struck me while I was reading the book.
First of all, thank you to Pune International Literary Festival for giving me the opportunity for this session. And if I may call you Somak, I would, urge you to call me Suman also. It's more personal, I believe. So for Somak for conducting this session. So it's a very interesting question, and to be honestly, I'm trying to think, the answer to that. And probably, when I was with him, I always thought of, he will always be there for the last 15 years. I always thought so. I never took a step back to recollect my interactions, or to make a documentary about our relationship or about him. Though there is one documentary called the Tree, I think, a French documentary on him, but it was made many years back. So and so this book also, as you have seen, it was a post recollection of my memories. So while he was there, I was so engrossed with the moments with him and our future, in the sense the movies that we will do, and so I never took a stopped in that and looked back to see how much we have traveled together. So hence the thought of a documentary never came to my mind until you just mentioned it now. Yeah.
So I actually mention it because of your growing relationship with the actor, because there's a clear sense of you looking at him as this great icon, this personality, and you then start growing closer and closer to him. So as if, he turned from a subject to a very personal, presence in your life. And that is very palpable in your book, that sense of a journey from knowing somebody as an institution to knowing somebody as a person. So I wonder if you could reflect on that gradual journey, how you became more and more close to him.
Yeah, actually, going back to your previous question also, um, if I was conscious of the fact that I am interacting with this legend, and to reflect on that would, I think, induce a sense of impurity in the relationship, in the sense that if I knew that I would make a documentary or even write a book later, then I think that there would be some amount of impurity in the relationship, because I would then have this thing in my mind to store the memories, or to collect the memories, or whatever it is. So in that sense, it's very good that that thought never came to me while he was there with me. And I used to often tell him towards the later years that I remember when I first saw him, as would happen to any film lover or anyone, particularly from Bengal. When I first saw him, I just couldn't believe my eyes that this was the same person from Shonar Kella or Opu or Moyur Bahan and whatever it is. So, which I mentioned briefly in the book also, my first impressions about him. And I remember later I told him one day that slowly from being an actor, co-worker, he became like a father figure to me. And that distance dissolved over time. Sometimes I repented that awe of Soumitra Chatterjee. I miss that also. The fact of that awe is very difficult to express what I'm saying, trying to say. So that's why I'm giving you a jumbled answer probably. But it's like if our father, however it is, you don't think of your father as a different person or whatever. So gradually that dissolved, and sometimes I repented also that that transformation happened. And he used to laugh about that. He said that bhaloই to, or good enough that it's good that you don't think of me as Soumitra Chatterjee. And also, he was quite. He detested the fact that in Bengal everybody treated him like a demigod, as we worshipped him, and that gave him a sort of frustration that he couldn't interact with anyone who didn't look up to him. So as a colleague or a co-worker or a friend, as he grew older, he lost so many of his friends. And I mentioned in the book also about Shakti Chattopadhyay, Sunil Ganguly, his close friend. Though they were not from the film fraternity, outside, of course, many from the film fraternity. Bhanu Bandyopadhyay was very close to him. Robi Ghosh. all of them were going, and he was being alone towards the end of his life, just because he couldn't talk to anyone normally. So I believe that he just loved it that he was my Soumitra Kaku and not Soumitra Chatterjee. Yeah.
So I want to come back to that point again, where I mean, there's a very, very fascinating chapter in your book where you contemplate making a movie about his last days rather. And I
Right.
want to return to that moment later. But before that, I want to also reflect on the phrase Renaissance man, which you use quite frequently in relation with him, and very rightly so. I mean, after Rabindranath and Buddhadev Boshu and all these great icons, there very few have been true Renaissance men in that sense as Soumitra Chatterjee. But he chose to be an actor, although he was a writer, he was a painter, he was an elocutionist. How do you think this notion of being a Renaissance man actually enriched him as an actor?
See, the term Renaissance man, which is used, I think denotes a certain kind of um all-encompassing knowledge. For example, if you think of it, Renaissance, the term I think originated from the Italian Renaissance, where people like Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo, they were experts in so many fields, geniuses in so many fields. Just take the example of Da Vinci or something like that. So that carried over, and of course, it was attached to Renaissance Bengal. If we are talking about Renaissance thing, Rabindranath was the ultimate Renaissance man, I would say, and but I think that all-encompassing knowledge or the expertise in different fields. So if I go by that definition, it enriches oneself, whether you are an actor or a writer, or so for example, take the case of an actor, Soumitra Chatterjee. If he's playing a school teacher, or different characters that he has played all over his life. Now, I use a term often with other actors also, not only Soumitra Kaku, that is, mogojer malish, mane the massage of the brain, and I think that is very essential for, soaking oneself in the different experiences. So the fact that his brain is always massaged with, and not only books, I'm saying different experiences. Soumitra used to love with interacting with the rickshaw puller, or the, and if you remember in one of the parts in my Adda session, with the dhobi he is interacting, and that enriched him so much. It gave a wonderful exposure, and hence he could, like a chameleon, go into the life of a, say, a zamindar or a lover or a school teacher, and that helped, that fluidity in experiences or knowledge helped him to get into the skin of these characters much more easily, I think. Yeah.
It's very fascinating because you would think that an actor as great as him would not, it would come to him naturally. Actually, it would not require so much preparation to actually get into a role. But the way you describe your experience of working with him, especially in Podokep, and how he prepared himself, I wonder if you would like to share some of that moments, from the shooting scene, how he actually worked himself up to play the role.
So what intrigued me and fascinated me and impressed me so much was that when I was making Podokep, remember, this was my first film. I had no experience before, in the sense I made a documentary before, but I never made a short film also in Calcutta. So he has no idea about this film which he is making, whether this will be a good film, bad film, which will remain in posterity or whatever. And I believe, I would like to believe that he did that with every other director. That independent of whether it's a Topon Sinha or a Suman Ghosh, he will give that seriousness behind, and that is, I think, the genuinity of him as an artist, or I think any good artist. I'm just talking specifically about him. He loved the craft and his work so much that he never bothered about all those things, and so he dived into the role as if he is doing this, like a Satyajit Ray film or a Tapan Sinha film, or what we had learned before. So I was fascinated that the way he was trying to pepper me with questions, and from where did I get the idea, and all those which I mentioned in the book, so many instances. So that was quite pleasing, an experience for me. uh, for example, in Podokep, I remember he was wanting to know any books which he might read. So I mentioned the basic idea of the film was from Scott Fitzgerald, Curious Case of Benjamin Button. Of course, I gave that to him, but he also went into there was a disease called progeria, which I used in the movie also. He wanted to know more about the disease. So actually, I then went back and got some medical journals for him to read about progeria. Now, you see, the good thing is that those probably don't have a direct connotation of using that, but it was as if he was creating a lining of his subconscious, which will emanate in ways he's also not conscious about. So he always did that wonderfully for all other films also, which I was fortunate to work with him. Yeah.
I mean, this level of detailing is what fascinated me, the amount of effort he put into every role.
Right.
And, I was also thinking about his background and also continuing association with group theatre and how he was
Right.
such a star on the stage. And there are so many great actors on stage, Homo Mitro, Tipri Mitro, who actually don't make it very big in films for various reasons, for personal reasons or otherwise. But Soumitra Chatterjee, till the very end of his life almost, was inhabiting both worlds. What do you think that did to him as a film actor and as a stage actor, basically?
True. So you rightly point out that the fact that many very good stage actors, they did not do justice to their roles when cinema acting was concerned. I don't want to name names, but uh, for example, I have worked with many famous stage actors, also legendary stage actors. I didn't find that level of nuanced acting which cinema acting demands. To understand the lens and those. So some theatricality comes out. So Soumitra Chatterjee was a person, a rare example, who was equally adept at both stage and cinema at the same time, and he carried that practice. So, I've thought about it, and interestingly, I have seen him perform on stage also. Uh, that it never felt theatrical when he's doing theater also. So there was a commonality in performance, but uh, just to go a bit deeper, I was very fortunate, apart from Soumitra Chatterjee, to work with some very renowned, nationally famous actors. For example, Konkona Sen Sharma or Mithun Chakraborty, Shashwata Chatterjee, Sudipta Chakraborty, and stuff. So I was one day explaining to someone there are two types of actors. That is, some are extremely spontaneous, who don't need practice. Those are called spontaneous actors, and some are there is a level of preparation and some spontaneity involved. So it's a combination of those two. So the names which I mentioned to you, for example, Konkona or Mithun, were more of that spontaneous genre of acting, while Soumitra Kaku or Kaushik Sen, they were, there was intense preparation behind the role, but left something when the camera said action. Okay, and actually, Kaushik Sen once pointed out to the fact that, so now if I take different takes, probably I'm going more technical than an audience would enjoy, but suppose you go for different takes. I knew that for, say, Mithun Chakraborty, by the time fourth, fifth take comes, his performance was declining. And he used to say that, I generate all the emotions and give it in the first two takes, and if you continue take it, it declines. But for Soumitra Kaku, if you take like 12 takes or 13 takes, you will get the same performance throughout. Okay, and that has to do with, so Kaushik Sen actually pointed out that now the names which you demarcate, he was telling me, interestingly, they are theatre actors also. Soumitra Chatterjee, Kaushik Sen, as against Konkona and Mithun. Mithun did stage theatre many years back, but never did active group theatre or stage theatre after he joined cinema. And while one is performing on stage, he has to perform in every day. So typically shows are many shows. Then so he has to perform the same stuff regularly. So that is the training of a theatre actor. That so in a condensed form, it's different takes as against different nights. They have to do the same thing, right? So, and I realized that, yeah, that's a very good explanation, in the sense that the demarcation which I told you about Mithun and Konkona as against Kaushik Sen and Soumitra, all great actors. So I think for Soumitra Kaku that was very important, where and I could see that uh, his preparation. So, for example, I'm going to take a shot. He will start it with the his sleeves folded, and while I say action, he will unfold the sleeve. Suppose I'm just giving you an example. Suppose that is an NG. NG is not good take. I want to take another take. He will again start with the same thing. But the good thing is that it will never seem mechanical. It will always seem that it is as if he's doing. So that is a preparation which he has done before, and then he leaves certain things to chance. So I have watched this. That probably this is the theater acting which is it's a crossover in terms of cinema acting. So yeah.
That's really a fascinating answer.
Yeah.
It's almost like watching a long distance runner, like
Yeah.
getting better and better, and gathering
Exactly.
speed. And with every night's performance, you incrementally kind of become even better, I
That's
suppose.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
So tell us about some of your experiences from the shooting floor. I mean, what was he like to work with? And, because you had a very intergenerational cast, as it were. Like, as you said, people from a very different age group with different experiences. So was it like a conflict-ridden thing, or was it more like amicable? How was
No,
it?
yeah, as I told you, while on set, of course, he was a very revered person, and our production team made all kinds of preparation. As I mentioned in the book, towards the last 4 or 5 years after his lunch break, a special bed was made for him, for him to take a nap, 30-minute nap. And we made all arrangements, and there was a general aura on set when Soumitra Babu আসছেন, like Soumitra Chatterjee is coming. So his room is prepared, and it's like we heard of Uttam Kumar যখন ঢুকলেন এতে, and somehow the set changed. And very interestingly, he was very some people were very almost bordering on scared when he was on set, and I can tell you why. One or two examples when I reflect back. He never liked loose talk. Loose talk meaning, suppose somebody says that আজকে গুরু পূর্ণিমা আছে তাই জন্য আমি এটা করব না. I don't know how do you translate that, Shomak, in English. There's Guru Purnima today, so we shouldn't do this thing. Guru
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
And he just made the remark. It's a production boy, for example. He would call him and said that, why did you say that? He also doesn't know why he said that, and then he would explain what was the logic. So the boy is not interested also. He has to serve chai or whatever it is, but he would explain that like a school teacher. He was almost like a school teacher on set. So, for example, I still don't remember the answer to that, because he had told me, I don't remember. So once we were shooting in Jodhpur Park, our location. So he's told me one day, and I was busy in the shot. Shumon, do you know why is it called Jodhpur Park? Why Jodhpur Park? People in Calcutta know that place. Honestly, that never came to my mind. Why is it called Jodhpur Park? And he gave me the answer. Now I forget. Even I don't remember, because I was so. But later, when I thought, we or who grew up in Calcutta, so many people probably never thought the etymology of why is it Jodhpur Park. So he was that type of a person, in curious details, and wanting to find out what is the meaning of this, that. So hence people around him, they were very cautious what they were speaking. But he was generally fun. He didn't harass anyone or whatever. But he used to just ask sometimes that তোমাদের প্রশ্নটা মনে হয় না, এটা প্রশ্নটা কোনোদিন মাথায় আসেনি? Didn't you have the question in your mind? And truly many of them did not. So he was like that old school teacher who was hell bent on these kinds of information. And but as I mentioned in the book also, he was uh, fascinated by very good acting from other co-actors. He was a wild fan of Soumitra Chatterjee, and as I mentioned one instance in Podokep shooting where he was waiting for a couple of hours to watch Soumitra Chatterjee's comic timing, and he used to point that out to me, Soumitra comic timing ta dekhle, and for all others. And if there was a junior artist or a debutant, like in Boshu Poribar, I mentioned Srinanda Shankar's first film, and she was very, very scared, performing with Soumitra Chatterjee in one frame. And I could sense that. So sensing that, I told Soumitra that and I just observed that he went to her and started chit-chatting about, small things. And, that made Srinanda so comfortable. So when the action happened, she never had that fear of Soumitra Kaku being with her in the same frame. So there were many instances which, I whatever I remembered, I wrote in the book, many of them. But even telling you now, I remember so many things.
At the same time, I mean, you do have a very lively debate with him throughout the book, as it were. You're sort of having arguments and all of that. So I wondered if there were any conflicts with you on the sets. Like, did you ever disagree on a particular approach or a character's development or something like that?
See, typically, I wouldn't say disagreement in the sense that, if we agreed to disagree, all of this happened in pre-production. So while on set, we were in the same tuned to the same wire. Okay, but disagreements happened in the sense, but it was not a fight or anything like that. For as you were asking me this question, I was trying to remember. So I remember one instance where in my film Boshu Poribar, the ending of the film is sort of, he is reminiscing, or his monologue. There's a monologue of his which ends the film. It was the last few pages of James Joyce's The Dead, which is considered one of the finest pieces of writing, the last 2 pages. And he translated that for me, as I write in the book. And while dubbing, he was dubbing that monologue, and I didn't like the way he was reciting it. It was like a Shruti Natok, what he was saying. Shruti Natok, again, what is the English, Somak? Help me.
It's like a recitation almost of a passage.
Yeah, that's right. So, but so I remember he did that like a recitation, and I didn't like the cadence and the tone of what he did. So then I told him that, Kaku, this is the ending of the film, and it is almost this character. Your character is recollecting, or or speaking to his own mind. So it will not be like you're narrating it to an audience. It will be almost you're speaking to your own mind. So then, he tried different. So he understood. He was. If you can explain logically something to him, he was always open to it. So then he said that a tone ta thik ache, this tone is okay, that tone is okay. So I said that it is not independent of the tone. You just think that you are talking to your mind, and then say those lines. And then it was wonderful, that take. So these types of disagreements happened, in the sense that I would say that it was my error in communicating to him what I wanted. So and but towards the later films, like last couple of films, there was almost an understanding of, because he knew me so well, he knew that what I wanted, matra ta koto hobe, everything was clear. He knew my aesthetic sense so well. He knew that if I overdo this, it will cross Suman's boundary. So it was almost a silent affair between us towards the later films. Yeah.
Right, right. There's another bit in the book actually which really fascinated me. His mention of Uttam Kumar, who is another Bengali superstar. And somehow, for at least my generation, we don't think of Uttam Kumar and Soumitra Chatterjee as really comparable stars because Soumitra Chatterjee is Feluda and he's a very intellectual, cerebral kind of actor. And yet we forget that he also acted in a lot of commercial movies, in comedies, in romantic comedies, all of that. I wonder what you think about his range, like the kind of tragic and the comic range that he had.
Unbelievable. Honestly, that's a point which I make in the book also. I try to force it because, after his demise, I saw the opportunity which was coming out in all over India, because I live in the US, on BBC, New York Times, and all. Everybody was talking about Ray's films. So that's why towards the end of the book, when I have a section of non-Ray films particularly. Uh, of course, everybody knows about Opu Shankshar and Charulata and Aranya Dinratri and these films. But for example, slapstick comedy, people outside Bengal, don't know that he did, such slapstick comedy, and which I mentioned in the 10 best films of his non-Ray films. So I don't think of anyone who has done this range with so much of confidence and expertise. For take Uttam Kumar. I and everyone are wild fans of Uttam Kumar for sure. But for example, I doubt whether Uttam Kumar would have done the role in Oshoni Shanket. His charisma, his image would not have, it wouldn't have, matched his charisma, that role. Even think of his role in Ekti Jiban, a Raja Mitro film, which was brilliant portrayal by Soumitra Kaku. I don't think Uttam Kumar could have done an Ekti Jiban. Uh, of course, there is the reverse also, where everybody, that's a common refrain, that probably Soumitra Kaku could not have done Nayak because Satyajit Ray wanted that charisma, which precluded Uttam Kumar from doing certain roles. Probably, but and so closest I would say. So it was a very good comparison. Uttam Kumar was the closest I would find, who also did wonderful comedy. Uttam Kumar, of course, as a romantic hero, there's unparalleled thing with Uttam Kumar. So yeah, so in that sense, I would say Soumitra Kaku's range was more than even the great Uttam Kumar, in Bengali cinema.
Right. I guess I was also coming at it from the angle of that hero, the hero of the film. And Soumitra Chatterjee somehow is larger than being a hero to me. Like
That's right.
he's like the presence in a movie who just overshadows everyone else.
That's
And
right.
that, I suppose, is a very unique ability to pull that kind of,
Right.
presence on screen.
And if I may interject here, towards the later years, after Satyajit Ray and whatever, I intentionally mention a film like Paromitar Ekdin, Aparna Sen's classic, where he plays a guest appearance. And it is such a fantastic performance. As I mentioned in the book, one of the best guest appearances in Indian cinema. That small role, uh, and he did that with Elan in other movies also. So where he was not the main character, films like Balasheshe Muiraki and my films, he was the main character, right? But he has done character roles which are unforgettable. So that was definitely part and parcel of the oeuvre of his work. Yeah,
No role basically was too small for him. Everything was
exactly.
equally important and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
valuable.
Uh-huh.
I also wonder if you would like to reflect on the fact that, I mean, you write about this at some point that Soumitra Chatterjee got the National Award for the Best Actor much, much late in life, too late,
Right,
belatedly.
right.
And I was thinking constantly that the fact that, such a great actor never acted outside of Bengali movies and never sort of wanted to expand his probably, range in other
Mhm.
languages, in mainstream, maybe Hindi movies. Do you think that's been a loss to cinema in general, or has it just enriched Bengali cinema in a different way?
No, I would say definitely a loss to Indian cinema because So now I am working in the Bombay film industry currently, and what I have seen is people in the Bombay film industry mainly know Soumitra because of Opu or Charulata, and that's it. The people don't know about him too much. I think it's a hard fact for Bengalis to absorb, but it is the truth. And the fact that his talent or personality or as a film actor, he didn't cross Bengal, and very except Satyajit Ray or maybe Tapan Sinha partly. Uh, so that is definitely a loss for thing. And towards the later years, I don't know how many people know that Anurag Basu had tried to convince Soumitra Kaku to do a Hindi film. Shujit Da had told me, or in an interview also he told that he tried to convince Soumitra Kaku to do for example, I think in Pink, he was offered a role. Now, towards the later years, he was not traveling outside Kolkata, so he didn't want to do that role, or he didn't find it interesting, or whatever. And Shujit Sarkar has gone on camera to say that it is a travesty almost that this industry didn't, or Bollywood industry, Bombay film industry, or Indian film industry didn't get to see him do different kinds of roles which has a national appeal. So even you see Satyajit Ray's films are after all a niche audience, which was really I would say a bit sad that it did not, And you say that it has enriched Bengali cinema. I think it wouldn't have diminished if he would have crossed and made. So, for example, take a Kamal Hassan. He has done Hindi films also, many famous Hindi films, but he remains a Tamil cinema legend, right? So I would have personally, and many Bengalis, I'm sure, would wanted to have Soumitra Chatterjee do certain roles which say a Kamal Hassan or even a Rajnikant has done in Hindi cinema. Yeah.
I was very fascinated where he says to you at one point, actually, and regarding Bengali cinema, that sometimes he feels that he's not challenged enough, something to that effect, that,
That's
his caliber and his talent is not sort of pushed enough. And that really moved me. The thought that, somebody of his age and stature is saying this, missing this ability to work with great
Yeah.
directors.
To be honest, Shomuk, I think he was feeling that deficiency, and I mentioned in the book, he was almost jealous of Irfan or Manoj Bajpayee, the actors he loved in Hindi cinema, or Nawazuddin. And he was seeing films like Lunchbox coming out of Bombay or Masan coming out of Bombay. And he used to lament the fact that, uh, to be honest, Bengali cinema was not, and so it is a responsibility for us, I would say, Bengali directors. We are responsible for that we could not give him. So, that kind of cinema as a Masan or a Lunchbox, which had an international appeal. But just think of the characters which Vicky Kaushal got on Masan or Nawaz Irfan got on Lunchbox. So towards the later years, I could feel that desperation in him, that he used to get, say, a P7 or a Moyurakhi or or certain films like that, or Borun Babur Bondhu, once in a while, once in 2 years, 3 years, and he was very hungry till the last day of his life. He was always hungry for good work, and he could see parallelly that what Manoj Bajpayee was doing, Nawaz was doing, and Irfan, his greatest thing, was doing. So I'm sure, and I know, not I know he has told me that it is a frustration. And when I started doing Hindi films, in the sense I've made one Hindi film, and he used to say, "Tumi yaar Bangla chhobi korbe na," with some sadness he was saying. So to go back to your question, yes, I am sure he was feeling bad about that. Yeah.
It's very sad that somebody who didn't stay complacent after working with Satyajit Ray, that could have been his brand throughout his life, but
Sure.
was always trying to push himself out of his comfort zone and his kind
Exactly.
of recognizable face that he had become. to not have the chance to do more interesting work. And I mean, of
That's
course,
right.
someone like you actually used him so interestingly, and gave him such an opportunity. um, and also, I think what you write in the book about the other aspect of his life, that he was a painter, he was a poet, he was an elocutionist, these things we forget so easily. And these are all little pieces that come together to make a person or an actor who they are. I wonder if you would like to tell the audience about his other interests, like how creatively versatile he was.
See, I had once asked Soumitra Kaku that if you didn't be if you were not an actor, what would you have become? A strange answer he gave me. He said, I would become a gardener. And he loved gardening. And so I think uh, acting was just one facet of the ways he wanted to express himself. So he wanted to, soak in the delirium of life. And it happens, it happened per chance, or, he became such a, not per chance, but we know him as an internationally renowned actor, but he as a person would have been equally happy if would have become a gardener. Another is plumbing. He loved, plumbing. And I can give you an example. One day when I went to his house, he was in the bathroom with someone, and then I just peeped in. I was sitting in the living room. I peeped. He was having a discussion with the plumber who had come to some fault, and he was trying to understand what he was doing, and I then was watching him. He was telling the plumber, আচ্ছা ওখান দিয়ে ওই ফ্যাসেটটা ওখানে ঢুকলো, আচ্ছা আচ্ছা তারপরে কি করলে, so he was, and he told me later the plumbing he loved a lot. So as a painter, as a gardening, was the fact that he said gardening, it is actually much more than that. It's a deeper comment, I think, that that flourishing of the plant or the flower or tree, that is what he wanted to do. And that is flourishing of his soul, if I may use a very strong word or a deeper word. So acting was a part of expressing himself. And towards the later years, he was very much into paintings. Okay? And in my book, there is one of the paintings he did, and he presented to me while waiting for his shot in during P7, which I have now, it is in my living room. And he used to always sketch or write some limerick or poems or whatever continuously. So he wanted continuously to express himself. So yeah.
I mean, he reminds me really of Feluda, who has this insatiable appetite for curiosity. Feluda, who is the
That's right.
famous detective in Satyajit Ray's stories.
Yeah.
And I mean, there was a particularly sweet moment, I think, whenever you mention Amartya Sen, that he is somebody
Right.
you also knew very closely.
Right.
And the way he sort of responded to that, trying to understand your work in economics, and
Right.
that really is sort of fascinating, the level of
Yeah.
his curiosity.
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. He was uh, uh, so he almost put Amartya Sen's scholarship at the বললো যে মানে রবীন্দ্রনাথের পরে যদি কোনো রকম বাঙালি হয়ে থাকে, after রবীন্দ্রনাথ, that is Amartya Sen. And and because Amartya Sen not only economics, but he writes on social movements, history and all, so he used to devour Amartya Sen. And the all encompassing grasp of and the knowledge base and the way to make a coherent meaning of all this. He always said that Ortoda has that talent which is so rare, in almost comparable to Tagore. Yeah. So he was, in a sense, a very, very big admirer of Ortoda.
And it's so beautiful that there's sort of the greatest work that they did came out of their life experiences.
Yeah,
When he speaks about the Bengal famine and Amartya Sen's
that's
famous
right.
whisper on the famine and
Yeah,
his
yeah.
experience of it, and
Yeah.
acting in
Later,
Vigan
so that was an article from Anandabaya Putrika where I wrote about these two gentlemen. And I also didn't realize before. And then I was thinking, Ortoda talks about the famine so much with, in his Nobel lecture also he mentions. And the same famine affected Soumitra so much. And, Shoni Shanket, one of his greatest performance was based on that same famine. So this is a connection which I made exposed thinking about these two individuals. their life journey, and both were very Rabindric in a sense. Both were Tagorean in their philosophy, their influence, and yeah.
I'm coming to the end of the conversation, but I want to ask you this question that I mentioned previously. And it really, I was full of admiration for you as a filmmaker, as an intellectual. The fact that you wanted to record his last days and you thought, you toyed with the idea of having a camera as he's dying. And that to me is a sign of supreme closeness to your subject, but also a kind of very distant objectivity from where you
Sure,
can witness this whole incident happening.
that's right.
Uh, I mean, you of course spoke about it with him, and he was very generous to allow you to even consider that option. But what was your feeling like when you were sort of about to broach this subject with him, actually?
See, as I write in the book, the reactions from many people whom I had told about this bizarre idea of mine, they almost were prepared to banish me or castigate me for even having that so-called cruel thought in my mind, and of exploiting an icon like that. But and then I kept quiet. But later I thought that he is supposed to be my one of my closest individuals in my life, and if anyone understands that I am not doing for any exploitation purpose, it's just an artistic curiosity. As we I talk about Stanislavski's Actor Prepares, the book, and I wish to name that film An Actor Prepares. And what better preparation than acting your own death? And he would understand the experiment and why I am doing that, and the curiosity in my mind on acting and the process, the creative process, and all kinds of things. So then I thought that why can't I be frank about this thing, and the way he took that, as I described in the book, I was apprehensive, honestly. I wouldn't say that I was sure how he would react, and I was apprehensive, and how he took that. I wouldn't say I was surprised, but there was a sense of relief that you know he didn't misunderstand me, and he appreciated the fact that from where it is coming, the intentions, because Shomok, that was a very risky line. If, for example, he thought otherwise, it would have culminated in disaster in terms of the relationship, because so I was very apprehensive on that angle, but yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking of someone like Bergman would have done this. Like he actually worked with a very close cast of actors, like you also did with Soumitra
Right,
Chatterjee with so many films. And
right,
he kept
right.
using them, and they were also stage actors, and he worked with them
Mm,
in his company and on sets and everywhere. So it's a language that a filmmaker sometimes wants to
that's right.
use, I suppose.
Mhm.
And related to the question is actually the fact that you mentioned a lot of your movies are written with specific actors in mind, and especially when you think of Soumitra Chatterjee and you have cast him in so many different roles. Uh, is it because you also wanted to see how he would react to a role like that, like that you would actually sort of cast him in that role, like how one role would differentiate him from the other in each of the movies that you made?
Yeah, definitely. If you come to think of it, again, those are not planned. Now when I look back, uh, his role, for example, I would say guest appearance in my film Nobel Chor, where he was a village school teacher, and I wanted to see how he changes his body language. So it was a game which I was playing with him throughout, in different roles. In Boshu Poribar, he plays this Bonedi person, and I wanted to see how he establishes himself with such elan, and and intentionally I did some mischief also. And I'm giving you an example. In my film Dondo, I made him walk with a limp, and I give in the book the reasons I had in mind or whatever. And the walking with a limp, I wanted to constrain himself his appendages and see how he then works, a different kind of acting would emerge. So I would call that a mischief, in the sense that he had a lot of dialogue pacing up and down, but I made him limp on that. So I would want to see how an delivery differs when you can normally walk pacing up and down, as against you're walking with a limp, which I mentioned that scene in Dondo in that book also. So I did all kinds of mischiefs with him, and I remember once. As directors, we have to explain the choreography to the actors, right? And at towards the, I think in Boshu Poribar one day, I said that you start the scene from here, but finally I want you to go and sit there, because the next scene Aparna Sen would come. So and so if it was in my early years, I would have been scared, because he would have said that, do you know what you're saying? What do you have in your mind? Keep it clear. But I told him one day that eta dhore nao, because he was an avid cricket lover. I said that, suppose this is that famous Bangalore pitch in where Gavaskar is 96, I think, right? In Bangalore. So this is the Bangalore pitch. How you will manage the bowling is up to you. But I want you to start your delivery from here and end the scene there, because it will be easier for me, Kaku, because the next choreography. So he used to smile, and then he would say, okay, let me think. Because he has to find motivation from going from, I'm just saying, I'm not exactly there, from here to there. He has to find the motivations, the way he will throw. He cannot just walk from there to there. So he would create businesses and things like that, and then say, ki hoiche, monoputo hoiche, and I would say, hoiche. Okay, thank you. So these kinds of mischiefs I did, because who else I can make that with such a talent other than Soumitra Chatterjee? Yeah.
It's such a pleasure to hear this, and I'm glad that you used the word game, which I was hesitating using, because it does feel like a game between a director and an actor. Like how many different permutations and combinations you can put an actor in. I think we have just like a couple of minutes left, so I will just ask you one last question, which is,
Sure.
if you were to make a literary text into a movie, and there's so much literature between you and Soumitra Chatterjee in the book, discussion of literature, which character would you have cast him as?
As literature, I don't know, but I would have wanted him. He also wanted to act as Rabindranath Tagore. So if there was a biopic made on Rabindranath Tagore ever, and particularly towards the last years, the way he looked and everything, I think he repented not playing Tagore ever, and I would have loved to see him in the role of Rabindranath Tagore. Who was also his ultimate, not only his, all of us's, and that is a role he would have liked to play. I would have liked to see him play in the role of Tagore.
We would have all loved it, I'm sure. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
missed opportunity, but anyway, thank you so much. This is such a pleasure talking to you, and I hope more people read your book.
Thank you, Somak, and thank you to all the listeners and the Pune International Literary Festival. Thank you.
Thank you.
A lot of mysteries about writing mysteries have been unraveled after this discussion. This was a very interesting conversation. Thank you, Dr. Suman Ghosh and Mr. Somak Ghoshal, for being our PILF guests. Our next session begins at 9:15 p.m. Please join us for Mysteries, the Enigma and the Intrigue after a break of 15 minutes.